What is up? Kaz here, and today we are looking at part 2 of our series on building stronger siege defenses. If you haven't seen part 1, I've put the link down in the description below, go check it out. And so in the first video, what I did was I gave some general tips on building stronger defenses, and in this video we're going to get to some of the fun parts, and we are going to be looking at building troll defenses. Now troll defenses, for those that aren't familiar with it, are defenses that are meant to catch your opponent off guard and steal wins because the attacker was not prepared to deal with your team. Now a little added bonus is that I find people rage attack these defenses more often than your typical strong defense. So when you get 1 or 2 wins out of a siege defense that's a troll defense, you're going to usually get 5, 6, or 7 defenses in a row. This is also the part where your average player is going to be able to create defenses and get more wins. Usually when you think of getting wins out of strong defenses, you usually think of some of your meta units. You think of your Sierra Laura Perna, you think of Sierra Orion Perna, you think of Artemil, you think of a lot of these commonly used Nat 5 heavy teams. This is the part where we get to throw all of that out the window, get rid of some of these meta units, and we get to have some fun with this. So when you hear some endgame YouTubers say things like Sierra is a free-to-play speed lead option, it just kind of makes you scratch your head and look at your monster box and see all of these quote-unquote free-to-play monsters that are missing. And I've been playing for 2.5 years and I still don't have many of these meta units. I don't have Molong, no Perna, no Tyrannus, no Iris, no Beta, etc. I mean, heck, I haven't even pulled a Miho yet. And so what we're going to do in this video is we're going to look at some out-of-the-box ways that you can get siege defenses. And like I mentioned last video, there are 2 things that you need to keep in mind when you watch this video. Number 1, if you are an endgame player in a G2, G3 guild, a lot of this is not going to apply to you. Number 2, a lot of this is going to depend on your rune quality. So if you don't have a solid GB10, DB10, or TOA normal 100 team, you're going to be very limited as to the results that you're going to be able to get from this. You need to at least be able to consistently farm good runes. So with that in mind, I want to give you 5 ways to build a troll defense. Number 1, use lots of RNG. Now, this has happened to everyone in this game. You have a match in the bag, you're down to 1 monster, and either a Theo or a Vio just goes completely nuts and wipes out your entire team. I had this happen just a couple days ago. I had my Shield Bow Cleave team attacking a team that had Theo in it. I had 2 monsters dead, Theo was an Endure, and then Theo decided he wanted to proc 8 times and wipe out my entire team. And I almost had to get another phone because of that, if you get what I mean. Another time, I had an Orion take over 20 consecutive turns and soloed my Sierra from full health. So RNG is going to drive you absolutely nuts, but if you're going to get some wins on defense, use it to your benefit. Because that terrible RNG, when you are fighting against a monster that is on a Vio set, is going to work on both sides. And so there's a couple ways that you can make RNG work for you. The first is using those Vio runes. Second thing you can do is you can make liberal use of Despair runes. And then the third thing you can do is you can choose units that have built-in RNG. For example, you can choose to build an Orion. And Orion works in a lot of teams. And the reason that is 1, he has that strip on his 3rd skill, and then he throws a bunch of debuffs randomly on enemies. And it's interesting that Orion always seems to know which will rune to strip and then throw a defense break on that unit. The other reason he's RNG based is his 1st skill. When he attacks, he gets a 30% chance to take another turn, and you better believe he's going to make very liberal use of that. A second monster that makes good liberal use of RNG built in is Roke. And with Roke, his 1st skill has a 30% chance to attack more than 1 time. So if you've ever fought him on defense, sometimes he'll hit you 5, 6, 7, 8 times and just completely wipe out a unit. And so he's a very good RNG based unit. Another one that works well with Galleon and Clara is Yen, and it's because with her passive, she has a 20% chance to take another turn when her turn's over, so she has a built-in Vio set. You have Hua, who has a chance to get a second hit, and you have the Dice Magicians, who take extra turns every time they get doubles. Now, some RNG teams that I've used in the past, outside of making liberal use of the Orion here that you see, one team that I've done in the past that was more or less free to play was that I ran a Beretta lead, I ran Lapis, and I ran the Dice Magician Morris. Where is he? Where is my Morris? I have no idea where my Morris is. Oh, there he is. Alright. And what I did was I had both my Beretta and my Lapis on Despair, and I had my Morris on Vio. And so Morris' second skill does an AoE stun. He has a chance to get another turn every time he rolls doubles. He throws debuffs everywhere. And his passive lets him have a chance to revive all allies every time he rolls doubles when there's one dead. And so this is a very RNG-based team. I used it very early on. My speed was maybe 150, 160 on all these monsters. And they actually came out with about a 60% defense rate. And this was even early on when my Beretta and my Morris was still level 35, 5 stars. Now, granted, you're probably not going to be able to take that and put that into a G1, G2 siege and get anywhere with it. But if you're early game, if you're early mid game, or if you just have exceptional runes and you want to throw them on a team like this, it can do wonders because there is so much RNG that can go wrong for your opponent when they attack that it's just a great troll defense. Number 2, build unusual combinations or monsters. Or you could take a strong team and you could throw in a monster that nobody uses. So a couple examples of this. So this is a team I used to use and I had fairly good success with it. That team was Carrack, Taurus, and Galleon. So I had Carrack as the lead for the attack, I had Taurus, and I had Galleon. And so the team looked like this. Now this team did pretty well. The idea behind it was that they were on a shield will cleave setup, and so they were designed to go second. So the enemy would go ahead and blow their turns, and then Galleon would throw a defense break up, Taurus would drop some bombs, Carrack would detonate a bomb, and then get an extra turn because of that. And it was just a really good combination. And up until recently, I was using this even in G1 Siege, and when I stopped using this team, they were about 90 wins and 70 losses. Now, the reason I stopped using it was because my guild had a crazy amount of Nat 4 defenses, and we just needed stronger defenses that were going to fill our Nat 5 towers. And so I dismantled this team so that we could fill that need. But this was still a very strong team even in G1. Another team that I have used in the past, which has given me some success, has been Lucia, Vertihil, and... where's my Vertihil? And then I had Copper. Now this team doesn't make any sense. It just seems to be 3 completely unrelated monsters. But the way I had this set up, I had Lucia on Vio for some crowd control. I had Vertihil there for turn cycling. And this is where it gets trollish. I put my Copper on Despair. And so his build, typically you want a defense buffer, like you usually see in Necessity, or you see a Megan, or something along those lines with the Copper to buff his defense. Copper nukes, and then you've got a 2v3 match. Now, anytime you go into a match like that, you already know what's going on, so all you have to do is bring options to strip that defense break, or that defense buff. All you have to do is defense break that monster, crowd control it, or just kill it before it kills you. And that's very easy to do. So I built this in a very different way, because you think, okay, there's no defense buff here, so he can't nuke. And while that may be true, Copper did quite the number on Despair. And this team also had about a 60% win rate. Now another team that I use is Kamoon, Orion, and Jubel. Now this is a monster that most people don't build. So you have Jubel here, who I've put on Vio and Revenge, and what he does is he primarily throws defense breaks and provokes all over the place, but then you get to his passive, and so what his passive does is it decreases the chance of receiving a critical hit by 50%, and it decreases the cooldown time of each skill every time you're attacked. So what that essentially means is that when Jubel's attacked, you're not likely to nuke him down in one shot if you're relying on critical hits, because he's got a 50% chance of not getting that critical hit, even if you have a 100% crit rate. And then on top of that, when he's attacked, he gets his provoke skill back. And so this is very RNG heavy, where he's just going to spam defense breaks and provokes everywhere, and you're not going to be able to kill him, and it's going to be especially hard to kill him through that Commune Shield. And this team right now, they are running 32 wins and 15 losses, so they're not doing too bad, and this is a frontline defense in G1. And so this is a very trollish team that you can use. Another kind of a trollish team that I use is Galleon, Kabila, and Garo. Now Galleon and Garo, a lot of people use those, but Kabila you don't see used very often. Now you think Kabila, you think attack bar booster, and you're absolutely right, she is an attack bar booster. But what makes her really awesome is that with her attack bar boost, she's going to give everybody a 3-turn buff that reduces the chance of getting hit by a critical hit by 50%. So she's going to give that Jubel passive to everybody. So if someone comes in, say, with a Julie comp to counter this Garo, there's going to be a solid chance that the Julie is going to miss a lot of her critical hits. And this is going to be a big deal, because if she doesn't get those critical hits, there's a chance that Garo may survive, and that some of these other monsters may survive. And then you've got Julie, who's a sitting duck and who's completely worthless outside of that third skill. And so they're able to steal some of those wins. And then one more fun one that I used to use, and this was really just kind of a novelty as I was playing around with the new toy. I used Fran, Lauren, and Carcano. And you think, who in the world is Carcano? Well, he is the fire sniper that nobody likes. And I had him built on a Vio Revenge set. And what the idea was behind them was that Fran would attack buff and give immunity, Lauren would defense break, and Carcano would just straight up nuke. And a lot of times he can do, 40-50k damage. And what's really cool about him is that his second skill, when it sets him up, it does 200% extra damage, and it goes through shields. So if someone comes in with a Wusa or a Commune, it's going to go straight through that shield, and there's a chance that that Carcano is just going to nuke straight through that shield. And a lot of people, I guess, didn't realize this, because this particular defense was something like 13 wins and 2 losses when I finally dismantled it, because 2A Escher came out and I was absolutely in love with him. And so I swiped my Fran and my Lauren and I put those 3 together. But this was another team that I kind of threw together, and they worked really well, and that was also in G1 as well. So again, build some unusual team combinations or use some monsters that nobody else is using. Number 3, build monsters with unusual speeds. Now, in most cases, this means to build a monster with blazing fast speed. Sometimes this can also mean putting a shield will cleave together and throwing people off by ruining a monster unusually slow. I've been trolled by more than one really slow Sierra. And so when I see a team like Sierra Orion +1, I immediately think they're getting first turn, and so I braced myself for that. Well, I brought in a shield will cleave, only to find out that this Sierra with her own speed lead was running about 130 speed, and the entire team was like that, and so I had everything built up, ready to use my own shield will cleave to nuke, and lo and behold, my galleon's completely worthless. And so you can rune monsters with an unusual speed. Another one that I've seen a lot, and this is one that I've personally done, is use Tyron. Now Tyron, I purposely in this comp have him at level 35 and 5 stars because I want everyone to look at him and see him as a non-threat. And what I did was I put him on one of my faster Swift sets, so he was running about 280 speed. And for a 5-star monster, that's kind of unusual. And I also had Bella and Kaido speed tuned to go about 220 speed. So Bella would come in, she would defense break, and I had her on Vio, so she had multiple chances to strip or defense break. And then Kaido would come in and just nuke. And this team has done pretty well as well. They are 34 wins, 19 losses. And so, even though this team only has a level 35 monster and is making use of a Wind Samurai that nobody uses, this defense is doing very well because I've built them with an unusual speed in the Tyrant and also in my Kaido. Number 4, try to seem as underwhelming as possible. So what that means is no transmogs. So on this team that I have here, again, with the Tyrant, Kaido, and Bella, I have no transmogs going on here. And it's part of the innocent act, because anytime you go into a battle and they have transmogs on, especially if you're an early game player and you're not used to seeing these, it's going to be a little bit scary, and you assume that because they have the transmogs, they have better runes. And so you're more on guard. What I try to do is I try to strip away anything that would throw up a red flag that this is an unusually strong team. And so with this, I tried to just minimize any possibility that it looked like a threat, and it worked very well. And then number 5, build monsters with an unusual build. And so what I mean by this is build monsters in a way that nobody else builds them. For example, one time I was going up against a Commune, Theo, and Chasun. And so this is a team that everyone has seen. So let me actually go into guild battle because my Commune is in a different team than my Theo, and I don't want to take those apart. So Commune, Theo, and Chasun. So this used to be a very common team, and to some extent, if you're early mid-game, that's still going to be a pretty common team. And so what you normally think is you have Commune that's going to protect the Theo, Chasun's going to heal him up even from Endure, and apply the attack buff, and Theo's going to go ham. Well, this particular time, I attacked this team thinking that that was going to be the case, just like it usually is, except in this case I had a very tanky and utility Theo, and I had a damaged Chasun, who hit me for over 20k, which really threw me off because I'd spent the entire time trying to deal with the Theo. And so needless to say, because I was preparing to fight that Theo, I didn't pay much attention to that Chasun, and I lost that one pretty quickly because it caught me off guard. So a couple other ways that I have personally built unusual builds in my monsters. I have used a copper that was on the Despair. Another thing that I have done is I have built my Veramos on a damage build. So where in the world is Veramos? Is he in a team? No. Okay. So I built Veramos on damage, and that team did very well as well. And I used a team similar to this, where I had a Fran and a Lauren, or some sort of an attack buffer and a defense break, and he would hit for about 30k damage on Vio, and it was just very unusual for someone to build like that, and it threw a lot of people off. I've also used him in combination with some other monsters in a way that you would think that he was more of a utility build than he would be a damage threat. But that's really where you troll people, is you build monsters in a way that just throws people off. Another monster that I've done this with, and I've teamed them up with a Gene, was I have used Elsharion. And actually, the team that I used with my Gene, and this is a completely farmable team, I used the Gene with Elsharion and Vertiheel. And the idea was that Vertiheel was on Swift. He was going to go first, boost everybody up. I still have my Elsharion built like this. I have him on a faster damage build. He hits probably 20-25k. And so he's going to catch some people off guard. And he hits really hard. And so usually when you think of Elsharion, you think that he's going to be utility. He's a little bit tankier. He's going to steal the buffs. In this case, I went with damage. And when I used this defense, they were doing probably about a 60 or so % defense win rate. And for me, I get a little bit bored after a while. I don't like 60% win rates, and so I try to do something a little better. And in this case, I threw together Gene, Rakan, and Wusa, who so far is doing 9 and 5. But that team served me well for quite a while. And so I built that Elsharion on Rage. Another thing you can do is build a desperately underrated monster and build them with one of your best rune sets. And that is going to throw some people off. For example, if you have Lapis and you throw that Lapis on a 270 speed Despair set, people aren't going to expect it. They might expect that from an Iris, but they're not going to expect that from a Lapis. Now, I'm not saying that you should do that with a Lapis, but the idea is that you should throw some good rune sets on some unusual monsters, and it will really catch people off guard, especially early to early mid-game players that are going to see underwhelming monsters in the team and think, hey, this is one that I can beat, and they're going to go in. Or you're going to have a G2, G3 player who's hiding in the lower ranks and trying to farm some guild points, and they're going to try to 1v3 you or 2v3 you only for your monster to be ruined very well. And so it's a good way to throw people off and steal a couple extra wins. So that's going to be for today's video. If you have any suggestions on siege defenses that have worked for you, or any troll defenses that have worked for you, put it down in the comments below. Let me know what you think. If you found this video helpful, show me a little love, smash that subscribe button, that like button, and until next time, peace out.